So, why did this whole thing happen? Well, as I see it, partly because blogs are becoming more influential, but mainly because politicians themselves seem so indistinguishable and remote from the voters that most political arguments now come across as exercises in opportunist point scoring conducted in management wonk speak. In fact, watching politicians debate the issues today feels a bit like sitting through the grinding, egomaniacal boardroom bickering sequences from The Apprentice.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought I caused 8 arguments.
Yeah, you did.
Politicians even seem to want to dominate the agenda when they haven't got anything to say.
If you just let me get a word in, I would be very happy to answer your question. I mean, would you like me to do that?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you.
The paucity of ideological debate is partly the fault of the news, which favours character and drama over dusty old politics. It means our MPs often end up essentially debating nothing more than who's the smelliest, and the public don't like it. No wonder MPs recently overtook paedophiles on the National Bogeyman Index, which tracks unpopular hate figures. So in summary, the press is defunct, people are awful, and Westminster is doomed. But never mind, here's a funny photo of a duck to cheer you up, and a silly noise. Here's a short piece from Nick Davis, the author of Flat Earth News, with his view on how some elements of the press gather their news stories.
For years, most Fleet Street newspapers have been using illegal techniques to get access to information, which they call, in their internal office jargon, the dark arts. The more you look at Fleet Street's use of the dark arts, the dirtier it gets. There are examples of them phone tapping, which is serious illegal stuff. Fleet Street got obsessed with Angus Dayton's sex life, which is a sad story in itself, and they had a British Telecom engineer place a listening device in the junction box near his home in order to listen to his phone calls. And that's a straightforward breach of the law by the engineer. They've also started using things called, Trojan horse emails, where the journalist sends the target an email which has an attachment which opens and then copies everything in the hard disk and relays it on to another email address which can't be traced to the newspaper but gives them everything that's on the hard disk. Part of the dark arts tradition in Fleet Street has been hacking into mobile phones, and this is a major industry, although Fleet Street continues to deny it. Journalist Clive Goodman got caught hacking into the mobile phone messages of 3 people on the staff of Prince Charles. And because it was the royal family, the police reacted. So Goodman got busted along with the private investigator who'd been doing the stuff for him, and they both ended up in prison. So the private investigators who work for Fleet Street basically have 2 techniques, bribing and blagging. So bribing simply means you hand over a brown envelope full of cash to whoever it is, the civil servant who can get you into the social security database, or the police officer who can get you into the police national computer. It's a criminal offence, but hey, who's asking questions? Or blagging. Blagging means that the private investigator cons the people who look after the database into releasing the information, and they're very skilled at it. There was one newspaper who had a former actor who was like their own personal blagger, who learnt how to speak with the kind of internal language of a British Telecom engineer. So a lot of what we know about the dark arts comes from a raid by the Information Commission on the home of a private investigator in Hampshire called Steve Whittemore. He set up a network of people who could get him access to these secret record bases. So he had somebody in the DVLA so he could convert a car number into a name and an address. He had somebody who had access to the police national computer. He had other people in social security. Newspapers were ringing him up for illegal stuff, and within half an hour he's delivering it for a fee. The Information Commission basically didn't have enough money to put the newspapers who had paid him in the dock. People are very frightened of the bullying Fleet Street newspapers. Government in particular don't like getting into fights with newspapers, so they back off. I think that if you ask where do the dark arts come from, ultimately it is about commercial pressure. It's about trying to get stories that nobody else has without putting in the money and resources that you should. And like so much of what's gone wrong with our news organisations, ultimately it is to do with being corrupted by commercialism. And the dark arts is an example of that for sure.
Music! And Dennis Healey takes to the stage of the world's most exhilarating, heartwarming, yet paradoxically shit variety show in the most uplifting event ever captured on videographic tape.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
Now, the two astonishing things about Susan Boyle are apparently, one, that she looks a bit like a cross between a Soviet premier from the 70s crossed with a haunted tree, yet two, she manages to have above-average vocal cords.
When dreams are made and used and wasted.
Except she's not that remarkable if you stop to think about it for, I don't know, 0.68 of a second. She's not got the greatest voice in the world, nor has she got the ugliest face. Just walk into the street and you can see a woman who looks like her standing at pretty much any bus stop. But thanks to a combination of our backward appearance-led culture and a nakedly manipulative set-up VT, which made her out to be a comedy loser...
Well, I've never been married. Never been kissed. Oh, shame.
Susan Boyle's performance soon became the #1 talking point for every tiresome prick in the land. Before long, this cheerful highlight of one hit ITV show became the cheerful highlight of another hit ITV show called The News.
And finally, we've been humming her song around the office once again today, and it seems we are not alone. The voice and the life story of Susan Boyle have managed to lift the spirits of millions in these tough economic times.
Oh, you. Of course, the festival of patronisation didn't end there.
Yes, Susan Boyle really did practice with a hairbrush at home in West Lothian.
Yes, they showed us all round her little house in her little corner of Scotland, which wasn't prepared for this kind of attention. Honestly, you'd have thought they'd discovered John Merrick could juggle. Inevitably, we're also forced to listen to some choice words from Formica Face.
I honestly think it spoils people if you give them a big old makeover.
What, like when you pump 10 gallons of Botox into their face?
But I think we'll keep her as she is for now, so she doesn't have the added pressure of worrying about what she looks like.
We also heard from shit sluggo ball bags here.
I mean, look, we're in the middle of a terrible recession. A lot of people in Britain have been suffering very badly from that.
I can think of some I'd like to suffer more.
And I think what Susan Boyle has single-handedly done is bring a smile to all our faces.
And she's achieved all this in just the show's first episode. 3 S's.
As well as dominating ITN's news bulletins, this feel-good story was also all over the papers, like an outbreak of some kind of Les Dawson visual spam mail. In fact, sometimes it felt like you couldn't go anywhere without seeing her face. You might as well have cut it out and stuck it on a pole and then stuck that to your forehead. Still, if her dominance of the UK was bad enough, it got worse when the Americans got wind of her. They managed to crank the condescension to a whole new level, patting her on the head like she was a magic baby that had learned to play the flute.
So, Susan, what a sensation this is. Do you wake up every morning now with a smile?
Or what passes for a smile on your unconventional face.
You also said to everybody that you had never been kissed.
No comment. Don't want to talk about that. Don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, fair enough.
Tell me, Susan, can you wipe your own asshole?
Were they surprised what you could do in front of that crowd?
I'm very surprised. I think they were gobsmacked.
Gobsmacked, one of my favorite British words.
I've got another British word for you. Shitehawk.
Let's try keep it ladylike.
Yeah, let's do. Okay, now just turn around for me if you will.
And do a little jig for us, like a monkey. Anyway, this whole saga simultaneously stinks and sucks in equal measure. For one thing, it's a PR story about a not that remarkable event on a televised end of the pier show starring 3 twats, which only became a news story because apparently it's a f***ing miracle that women who aren't conventionally attractive are also capable of exhibiting any kind of skill whatsoever. But instead of being allowed to find this depressing, we're told that actually it provides hope for us all.
Susan Boyle has shown us that there is hope for humanity.
Basically, instead of being feel-good, this whole thing strives to make me feel unbelievably and unbearably alone on this stinking fetid kidney stone we call a planet. Still, maybe a little song will help me get through it, yeah? I dreamed a dream in time gone by. Well, that's all we've got time for this evening, and indeed this series. Go away.
There are a few frights in store for the MP for Halton, Price and Howden next tonight on BBC4. David Davis sits down with Marcus Brigstock in I've Never Seen Star Wars. Next.